Welcome back, engineers. In the last few videos, we have used the term proxy quite a few times, but we have not really looked at it closely. In this video, let's have a closer look at what proxies are, what do they do, and how are they helpful to us in system design. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. So first, we'll start with the fundamental question, what is a proxy? So proxy by definition is a substitution for something. So it could be a substitution to anything. So something that is replacing something else, we can call it a proxy. So in terms of our system design, there are several different use cases where we can use a box, a server basically, and it can act as a proxy to something else. So let's have a look. So one of the examples is CDN as a reverse proxy. So we spoke about caching and CDN, content delivery networks, where we can get data from the nearest server, right? So the actual data is somewhere else, but we are accessing the data through the nearest server. So in some sense, it is acting as a proxy to that main server, right? And the second example is an API gateway. We have seen this in the previous video where we are preventing access to our backend directly, and we are using gateway server in between, which is acting as a proxy to the backend services, right? And another use case is during microservice communication. So we are inside the backend now. There are a bunch of microservices communicating with each other. So instead of directly giving IP address of each of the microservices to each other, which is not scalable, we can use some kind of a service mesh, which has some kind of a proxy for each microservice. So this is also called as a sidecar pattern, right? So in this case as well, we can see the implementation of a proxy server being used, and the communication is driven through proxy, right? So the main microservices are hidden from the network. And then we have several different use cases about why proxies are helpful. Like I said, we are protecting backend services. It's not just backend. We are protecting any service or any individual from something else. Then we can make use of proxies. So let's say I'm an individual using a VPN. My identity is protected, and the VPN's network is being shown to the outside world, right? So it's some kind of a protective mechanism when we use proxy. And we can also use this for load balancing because it is a server in itself. It can take care of load balancing and load distribution. It can also be used in database proxies. So this is another use case where we can use tools like Proxy SQL, let's say, which is primarily used for proxying services for databases. So we are hiding the implementation details of the database layer, and the Proxy SQL can have some additional benefits like caching, query responses, and so on, right? So these are some of the use cases and purposes why we would use proxies in system design. Now let's have a look at the types of proxy. So there are mainly two types of proxies. First is a forward proxy, and the second one is a reverse proxy. So the forward proxy looks something like this. So this is me. I'm trying to access something across the internet, and the proxy system or the server or the configuration is sitting in between me and the internet. So even before the request is broadcasted to the wider internet, the proxy system is in place, right? So this is a forward proxy. The opposite is the reverse proxy. So I'm able to access the internet, and everything else, the backend systems or the database or whatever, is being protected through a proxy. So this is called as reverse proxy. So this is sitting in between the internet and everything else. In the case of forward proxy, it is sitting in between me and the internet, right? Now let's have a look at a quick demo about how forward proxy works. We have already seen how reverse proxy work in the previous video where we have discussed API gateways. Now let's have a quick demo about how forward proxy works. So it's sitting in between me and the internet. So I've prepared a README file for you, and it's already available in GitHub. So it uses a tool called Squid, which is a proxy server tool. And there is a config file where I have basically just configured one thing, which is to block google.com, right? Just for demo purposes. So here's how we can use this. So in order to use this, we need to have our Docker running, and we'll just take this command and issue it in the terminal. So this is taking the latest version of the Squid tool and running it on a Docker container on port 3128. Okay, and it is using this config file that we have seen before. So let's use a terminal, and let's go to the folder where this is available. Okay. Okay, now we have the proxy server up and running. We can verify this in Docker. So we can see it here, Squid latest image is being used and we have the proxy server running. Now, let's see. First, let's try to access an allowed site, like let's say Wikipedia. And for this, let's use another terminal. So we got back the response. We received some HTML with some scripts, which is a good sign that there has been no blockage, right? So if I were to use this on a web browser, we would actually see the web page rendering, right? So there is nothing hidden here. Now let's try to access this blocked website, which is google.com, right? Now this website is not accessible because we receive a response 403, which is HTTP status code for forbidden. So if you look at it closely, so the curl is going through our 3128 port, which is where our proxy server is running, and it is trying to access google.com from here. So the proxy server is going through the config file and seeing if that particular domain is in the block list. If yes, we send out 403 error, right? But we are explicitly using this command to route our google.com request through the proxy server. But if I were to just do it on the browser, it is still accessible, right? So the proxy server is just for now being used for explicit curl requests, right? So what if I want to do it at a system level? So I can use the same proxy server which is running and I can connect it to my Wi-Fi. So this is the Wi-Fi I'm on. I can go to the proxy settings and I can enable the secure proxy and point it to our port 3128, which is where our proxy server is running, right? So if I do this and try to access google.com again, we get the same error, 403 forbidden, the proxy server is refusing connections. Now I've taken that configuration to one level higher, to my local Wi-Fi, right? But this is still at my system level, right? If I want to take it to all the devices on my network, I can configure it at a router level or maybe at a firewall level, and then it applies to all the devices in my system, right? And that's how we can enable forward proxy. So this is acting between me and the internet. So the demo that we saw just now is an explicit forward proxy. So the configuration is being made into my computer. So if I have to do this on my phone, I would have to do some proxy setting on my phone and then these rules will apply, right? And similarly, when we want to do it at a scale, so we'll use a transparent proxy. So it's the same concept. We are doing some kind of an intervention between us and the internet. But if I'm a company and I want to enable policies across all of my devices, I would not sit and type in this configuration on every single device. I would like to push it through some mechanism so that I can control it remotely. So that is where transparent proxies happen. So here the tools are some MDM tools or group policies can be used to make sure that forward proxy is enforced across all the devices, right? So that is how forward proxies work. Now let's see some of the benefits of using proxies. Some of them we have already seen. First is security. We can hide IP addresses, not just server IP. We can also hide client IPs. We can also do rate limiting. We can also do load balancing. We can do caching. We can do compression. So because it is a server in between, we can do all this kinds of stuff. And we can also implement centralized logic, like I mentioned about transparent proxy. It can also be used in backend systems, in systems like service mesh, where we want to handle proxy at a network level across all microservices. I don't want to be typing in the configuration for each microservice that I will introduce. I can use tools like Envoy to make sure that there is a proxy automatically added whenever a microservice is loaded. So that's how we can use proxies. Now let's see some of the challenges and trade-offs. Because the proxy server is a single server that is in between me and something else, it can potentially act as a single point of failure. It will add to latency because it is additional network hop. It is also a complexity addition to our configuration and the overall system design. And it also provides challenges when we talk about debugging. So we need to check whether it's an issue at the proxy level or whether it's really an issue at the backend level. So there is some additional complexity in terms of debugging. And of course, it also adds to cost because every server is a server and it needs to be kept up and running, right? So these are some things to think about, at least when you're discussing system design or when you're actually implementing or doing in the system architecture for any of your application. Now let's look at the design patterns involving proxies. So proxy is a general topic, and it just means substitute for something else. So depending on where you use it, the implementation changes. If you're doing low-level design in object-oriented programming, the proxy is used differently, and when you're doing high-level design or system design, the proxy is used differently. So if you have not seen already, I have already covered the proxy pattern in low-level design, where I've explained how classes can be used to implement this proxy behavior. So definitely check out my video on proxy pattern in low-level design, right? Now, these are some of the tools that are popularly used. Nginx, we have seen this before. It can be used for different proxying purposes. We have Envoy, which is used in service meshes. We have Squid, which we have seen a demo just now. And then we have cloud proxies like Cloudflare, which is a CDN. And then AWS Load Balancer is another example of a cloud proxy, right? So every cloud provider has some mechanism to provide proxy services. Okay, that's all I had for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the demo, and if you have any questions, definitely let me know about proxies or anything that we have discussed so far. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Do leave a like if you found this helpful. Please subscribe if you haven't done already, so that you don't miss out on this playlist or any other future videos. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.